Robert Ward is my name. I'm the Marketing Director here at the National College of Ireland. And on behalf of the College, you're very welcome here. Don't forget, #GoFurther with NCI. We're delighted to partner with Independent News and Media. And finally, looking to the future, Adrian Weckler, he's the Group Technology Editor, and he's going to give us some insights into the technological changes and challenges that are facing the industry.
Hello, my name is Adrian Weckler. I'm a journalist with the Irish and Sunday Independent. I was intrigued by Mitchell's reference to internet fridges and televisions as part of the media spectrum. Actually, what's happening with fridges and TVs is the Internet of Things strategy is having very, very mixed effects. So at the moment, fridges are starting to send out spam, okay, because they're actually being hacked. So a year ago, a hacker actually managed to hack a network that included fridges and TV, and it started sending out spam, hundreds and thousands of messages of spam. So I'm not quite sure that we're going to quite get there with that yet. However, one of the things I do as a matter of course when I interview tech industry executives, particularly chief executives, particularly founders, particularly startup founders, is as a matter of course I often ask, you know, you've got $100 million or euro in funding, you are growing really quickly. What would you do if you owned a newspaper? How would you run it? What would you do? And the responses that come back are not usually especially positive. So the tech industry loves the media, needs the media, but it's not especially complimentary about the media and how we do things and how we set ourselves up. So the most recent example was a guy called Adam Burke, who's the president of a company called AdRoll. And AdRoll, which actually it's an American company, but has a base here in Dublin, that basically it retargets ads. So it's a fairly sophisticated online ad targeting company. And I was interviewing him just because they're mega rich and they're setting up in Dublin. And he said a couple of things. He said, as an industry, we're not doing nearly enough to capture the audience that we could be capturing. He said we're sitting on a gold mine of content, of location data. And he said we just don't move fast enough with the times. We don't move as fast as startups, for example. Now there are some good reasons for that. Startups are willing to fail, they're willing to crash, they're willing to break. We've been around for an awful lot longer, so we don't quite have that privilege. But sometimes you have to think, if you gave access to 50% of your archive, for example, to one of these guys, to one of these startups, that here's the deal. You go and you do whatever you want with those archives, anything you want, and you get to keep half of any profit that's made. You wonder what the downside to that would be. Snapchat is a very good example. If I could just ask the audience here today, how many of you actually have a Snapchat account? Okay, that's not bad. How many of you use your Snapchat account daily? Okay, so that's me. I count 5 people in this whole room. How many of you could confidently say you know exactly what Snapchat does and what it's doing at the moment? So that's about 10 people. So at the moment, that's very representative, okay? For example, in the media, most of me and my colleagues, most of us, not only do we not use Snapchat, we don't even really know what it is, and we're kind of resistant to thinking about it. Yet, half of Irish people under 35, half have a Snapchat account, and half of those use it every single day. What's more, a lot of media organizations now are starting to experiment with channels like Snapchat is where the likes of Facebook might have been maybe 5 years ago. So Sky News, for example, if you look today on Snapchat stories, Sky News will have a piece by Ed Conway, who's their economics editor, explaining to you how GDP works. Cosmopolitan, a lot of CNN, a lot of American networks are on there. And I'm just using that as an example. None of them are actually making much money out of it, but they're willing to try stuff. And this speaks to the future of media and what we're doing right and what we're doing wrong. It's a similar attitude as to when Facebook launched. Now, I was here when Facebook launched, and the view in the media was that it was a fad and it was something mainly for teenagers, and yet now probably Facebook provides more traffic in a single chunk to any media organization's website than any other single source, maybe with the exception of Google at times. So just before I go into some of the slides here, I'm just going to, just for your own context, because sometimes we talk about these ideas and we talk about what could work and what may not work. But just to give you an idea of the landscape at the moment. So is there anybody out there are there any media organisations out there who are really doing well? Well, there are a couple that come to mind immediately. So believe it or not, the Daily Mail is the world's biggest newspaper online. Okay, it has about 220 million unique visitors per month. And it's doing that because it's extremely aggressive. It's decided we are just going to be completely aggressive. We don't care. We're going out there. We're going to get traffic. And as a result, it now has 600 online staff, makes about €100 million a year in revenue, is profitable, and is basically keeping that newspaper group, I suppose, stable, or certainly with decent prospects. The FT is the other side of the coin. So the Financial Times just been sold to Nikkei. You probably read that. I think it was £850 million sterling. But they have pulled off a miracle in publishing terms. 70% of all of their sales are now online sales, online subscriptions. Their total circulation is growing 10% year on year. They now have 720,000 subscribers. Now, if you were to offer us in the Independent Group or the Irish Times or the Guardian, if you were to say, here's 700,000 paying subscribers, that's your heaven, that's your nirvana in terms of a commercial model, because then you're not reliant on the fickleness or the vagaries of different advertising models of trying to keep up. But I'll talk a little bit about some of those advertising models. Before I go on to slides, the last model I would mention, because you have to mention it, BuzzFeed now is the model which many of us just can't ignore. It gets about 190 million unique visits a month. You remember that post about the dress? What colour is the dress? Is it blue or green? Is there anyone in this room who didn't have an opinion on that? Okay, you didn't have an opinion.
I don't give a shit.
You don't give a shit. Okay, fair enough. That's absolutely fine. Hands up who thought it was blue. Okay, so most people thought it was green. Fair enough. What? Gold. Sorry, gold. Okay, yeah. So you did read that story. Okay. So one of the questions, and it's been touched on a little bit, is will social media essentially become the framework for most of our media? And it's a real question. So Facebook is launching a feature called Facebook Instant Articles. And in other words, it knows that it drives a massive amount of traffic to us and to everybody else. So it's trying to convince us that the best way in future for all of us, them and us, would be to just publish directly to Facebook. Not bother with our own website, not bother with our own channels, just go right to Facebook and publish right there. It'll be faster, it'll be quicker, etc. It even promises that it will allow us to keep 100% of the revenue of the ads that we sell there, or 70% if they happen to sell ads around our content. Now, most publishers are resisting that at the moment. I'm not sure how long we'll be able to resist that, because eventually, if it keeps going the way it's going at Facebook, it's going to be very, very difficult to resist. Apple is doing something similar. It has a new news content delivery feature that it will have in iOS 9, which is its next iPad and iPhone operating system update. And it wants, again, to capture the news and media content simply because it believes that it's the best platform to do it. Mattress Mick appears sometimes on pre-roll ads on YouTube and on websites. And pre-roll ads are a pain in the neck. I mean, don't get me wrong, they do bring in revenue. They're actually an important part of a commercial strategy for a media publisher. But to the user, if you go on some TV stations in Ireland, you go onto their website and their player service, you will see 3 30-second pre-roll ads before the program you want to watch. Into this context comes ad blocker software. Now, do any of you use ad blockers on websites? Okay, that's at least a third of the audience here. Ad blockers have something in the region of about probably 200 million users around the world. It's mostly people in their 20s who use it. I did a quick poll around the office today. Nobody over 35 uses them because they just can't be bothered. And pretty much everybody under the age of 25 it does. And they wipe out all kinds of ads. That kind of technology is growing. Is that going to have an impact on the way that we can actually make money? I think it probably will, although there are counter services from companies like Pagefair here in Ireland, which will actually offer you a service that will tell you where you're going wrong with your advertising strategy and how to counter the ad blocking. If you look at some newspapers and some media publishers are actually trying to live without ads altogether. The FT, that's fine. That's a global financial brand. They can probably afford to do that. But some regular newspapers, there's one in the States, the Salt Lake City Tribune, has roughly the same circulation sales as the Irish Independent, is roughly the same profile, and it's now offering an ad-free option on the site for $10 a month. So if you pay $10 a month, you won't see any ads. You see all the stuff, but you see no ads whatsoever. Again, who will pay that? Nobody under 30 will pay that. A lot of people over the age of 40 or 45 will consider it. They say they've gotten off to a flying start with it. Micropayments is another issue which is becoming quite popular. So there's a Swedish company called Klarna, which owns micropayments pretty much in Scandinavia. Micropayment, by the way, is instead of paying a subscription to a site for a week's access or month's access, you can click on an article and maybe be charged 5 cents to see it, or 10 cents, or 1 cent to see it. And quite a few European newspapers are experimenting with this. It's popular in Holland as well. So the tech industry has other ideas for how we in the media industry could do things. Some of them are a little bit daft, to be honest. So this is an Oculus Rift, a virtual reality headset. I'm not sure if many of you have seen or worn one of these. It's a giant cranial strap-on. You put it on your head like that. It's used at the moment in its early stages for gaming. It's supposed to give you a virtual reality experience, not unlike sort of Keanu Reeves, sort of circa 1999, but much more realistic. More games, more apps being programmed for it. But one of the hype cycle items at the moment in the tech industry is that virtual reality and augmented reality, such as Microsoft's HoloLens, might actually enable us to deliver video reports, maybe ads to people in 3D. Augmented reality, by the way, for those who don't know it, instead of virtual reality where you put the whole thing on and all you see is a screen and you're immersed into reality. If I put an augmented reality headset on now, I would still see all of you, but I could see bombs dropping on you, for example, if I program it that way. So it's supposed to enhance your field of view. Some property websites in Ireland have actually tried using it on a phone, so that when you hold your phone up like that, you can see that there's a property over there and there's an office block over there, using GPS that's for sale and tell you where it is, etc. It hasn't really taken off yet. One of the reasons is that people generally don't like wearing tech on their head. They just don't. So the standard wearable item for years was the Bluetooth headset. That's the little thing that went on your ear and connected to your phone. But what we discovered about that was you look like an idiot when you walk down the street wearing one. Even taxi drivers, which was the last line of defence for the Bluetooth headset, have now largely given it up. So there probably isn't much there. Now, I think wearables were mentioned. So the Apple Watch has been the big buzz item over the last 12 months. You can read into what you want about the success of the Apple Watch or not. Apple isn't breaking out the figures for its sales, which is unusual. It normally does when something is going well for it. It says it's on target. Personally, I think Mick might be the only person I know who actually went out and bought one, because I know he has one. This is partially because independent, we are at the cutting edge and ahead of the game. We also do have our own Apple Watch app, just in case any of you have an Apple Watch there right now. But it's not yet clear what the wearables role exactly in the media future will be. One reason is because what the Apple Watch really does, and what Apple didn't really tell you, what the Apple Watch really does is it sells you back your own time. So it's designed to tell you when you have a text message or an online social message or something like that coming in. But instead of you having to reach into your pocket, take out your phone, click it open, unlock it, check it, see that it's actually a useless message you've no interest in, but while I'm here I'll still see what's happening on Facebook, that takes about 60 seconds per engagement. And I do that at least 30 times a day, If I have an Apple Watch, which I don't have on me at the moment, but if I do, it comes in, I can just glance and dismiss it. So what's actually doing is it's selling me back my own time. That's what the Apple Watch is doing for people who really are using it well. Now, this has been mentioned before, but I just wanted to touch on, because I actually find this quite interesting, the idea of native content and native advertising. Native advertising is basically the idea that instead of getting a bunch of copywriters or marketing people or somebody from advertising to write a few messages into an ad, you actually get a newspaper actually will have journalists on hand, and they will write something which is a cut above what you would normally get, but it will be branded as paid for by or whatever. Now, all the big publishers are doing this. The New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Guardian, and a lot of the big advertisers, Dell, IBM in the tech area. I think Mitchell mentioned Netflix. He mentioned I think was it Orange is the New Black is the campaign you mentioned. That was a good one. I mention this because for the newspapers that are using it, it is proving to be very lucrative. So the New York Times, for example, last year it ran 50 campaigns around native advertising campaigns, and with 40 advertisers. That brought them in $18 million. It's almost $18 million euro now in revenue, which was an 11% increase on their digital revenue. Now, it's very hard on the two things about that. First of all, it's hard to ignore that kind of revenue because that actually funds other parts of the newspaper. The stuff, the stuff that we really want to actually, bring to the attention of the public. The vocational part of being a journalist. It's also interesting because because the stuff's really good. I mean, it's strange to say it, but Orange is the New Black, Netflix, that wasn't the only thing that Netflix did. It did a really interesting series at the same time as House of Cards, the Kevin Spacey Netflix series, looking at presidents and their wives. Even skeptics of native advertising or of advertising market of crossovers thought that it was just extremely well done. It got an awful lot of views. New York Times now has 30 journalists who do this. 30 journalists. And it doesn't seem to affect its integrity on the whole, or its ability to pursue other journalistic pursuits with a lot of integrity. In Ireland, there are some good journalists already going over to what we might have called at one point, the dark side. So this is John Collins. He's a really good journalist. He used to be the technology editor of the Irish Times. He then became another editor in the Irish Times. And 2 years ago, he left to become the managing editor of a tech startup called Intercom in Dublin. Intercom is essentially, it's a tech media, tech marketing company. Got about 20 million euro in funding, is doing very well, has a big presence in the States. And what John does now is he is in charge of all of that company's communications, blog posts, social media. He's overseen two books for Intercom while he's been there. And it's a smart move by Intercom because Intercom has thousands of clients, and it's really important to them, to the company and to their clients, that the stuff that they read from Intercom, everything that's presented, is intelligent, sharp, smart, and tells them that they're dealing with people who know what they're doing. So that's what they did. They hired John Collins, he's gone over there, and that's happening more and more and more. Paddy Power. There's nobody here who hasn't seen a Paddy Power viral campaign. That doesn't happen by accident. They have 10 journalists now that do nothing but plan and create social campaigns to react to things. It's not just the planned stuff either. The way they use technology with old-fashioned media is extremely clever. So last year there was a manager for Newcastle United called Alan Pardew, and he headbutted a defender for Hull City. Caused a big furore at the time. Within half an hour, Paddy Power had an ad ready for next morning's print newspaper based on it, and they could only do that because they have the technology to actually morph and frame all of that now. almost done now. The decline of traditional TV is dismiss anything you hear. This is my opinion, but dismiss anything you hear from traditional television marketers that tell you that TV is still the absolute bastion in media and marketing. It's still very strong, but there's no question that a certain demographic are moving away from television. And when I say television, I mean the big set that sits in the sitting room with your couch and your sofa. They're still watching television content or shows, but they're increasingly not watching it on the television. So here in Ireland, we measure TV ratings by a thing called the Television Audience Measurement, the TAM ratings. So in the last 2 years, live TV viewership in Ireland, at a time when we haven't been booming, when traditionally TV viewership goes up, has fallen from 84% to 77% in 24 months. Now that's quite a big drop in live TV viewership. And where are they going? Well, according to the same TAM ratings, people watching things on their phone at home has quadrupled, albeit only to 3%, right? But Netflix and other paid-for video online stuff has made up the slack. So there's a big change in consumption going on there, and that's going to affect the way that we go about our business as well. Finally, there are a few tech cul-de-sacs that we need to be wary of. So some of you will have heard of, sometimes the tech industry pitches us things like, pitches the media industry new ways of doing things. So Google Glass, for example, you probably heard of that. That was a headset that you put on, had a little camera, little computer. There were some good applications you can imagine for it. The problem was that the only demographic that was overwhelmingly delighted with it was that demographic there, right? Was basically white men between the age of about 40 and 50 who thought it was brilliant, right? Your Top Gear demographic. There's even a Tumblr blog called whitemenwearinggoogleglass.tumblr.com that actually catalogues all of the instances of people wearing Google Glass, and the vast majority of them are people who look like that. And that's death if you want to actually launch a product. In conclusion, I just say that one problem that we in the media industry have is that we often don't take technology seriously enough or adopt it seriously quick enough. And I include myself. This is not me preaching from the pulpit. I'm part of the problem. It's not that we don't see or acknowledge that a YouTube blogger gets more views or has a bigger impact or is more commercially successful than most of our own content producers, for want of a better term, in terms of immediate impact. It's just that we're uncomfortable with that emerging fact, and we're slow to acknowledge it. My last job before I came to the Irish Independent, I was the appointed digital editor for the Sunday Business Post, and part of my job there was, as well as writing about tech, to actually try and bring the newspaper to create a new digital presence and platform for the newspaper. That at the time that included a paywall. It worked fine at the time, but I remember at the time, while most of the senior management and journalists were behind it and were very supportive, there were some there was a lot of resistance to it. There was a lot of resistance to the idea of it. It was regarded as a kind of a boutique niche project that was detracting from the main business, which was getting the newspaper out every Sunday. And we just can't afford to think. Thankfully, that is completely different to the way we think in the Indo. We've hired an awful lot of people and are easily the most read and the website with the highest reach in Ireland. So lastly, if you want to go and look at something really interesting, last year there was a New York Times leaked document. It was a very honest document about what they themselves were getting wrong in terms of their digital strategy, the digital presence. It had 100 simple tips. If you really want to see the best and most interesting, persuasive document around all this, I'd advise you to go and Google that. So thank you very much.